Hi there. I'm so happy you're here. Here's what you'll gain by listening to the very last second of this conversation with Tracy Baines. Tracy founded STEP. It's the Student Expedition Program, and this program achieves a 96% college graduation rate by providing comprehensive support to low-income Arizona students through experiential learning, rigorous academic preparation, and self-advocacy skill development. Throughout this conversation, you'll learn why taking challenging AP courses in high school is more valuable for college prep than focusing on the actual exam scores or dual enrollment. You'll learn why going directly to a four-year institution with full financial need coverage is more effective for degree completion than starting at a community college, which is a message a lot of kids hear. And you'll also hear skills that are critical for college success. Stay with us. I'm so excited to have you join our conversation. This is Solutions Coaching and Teaching Strategies, the podcast that extends education beyond the classroom. A show that offers educators and caregivers strategies to try right away and ensure every student receives the inspiration and support they need to thrive.
I am Olivia Wall, and I am honored to welcome Tracy Baines as a guest on the podcast today. Let me tell you a little bit about Tracy. Prior to founding STEP, or Student Expedition Program, Tracy taught expedition-based programs with a variety of incredible organizations. In 2002, Tracy turned her full attention to STEP, providing low-income Arizona students and families with the knowledge, guidance, and advocacy skills to successfully navigate the pathway to acquiring a college degree. Tracy, I think the work you are doing is so critical in developing a better world, and I'm really honored to hold space for this conversation. Welcome.
Thank you, Olivia. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Let's start with your origin story because your background is fascinating. So, I know I just shared you started the STEP program in 2002. How did the idea for STEP even come to play?
Well, when you say I started in 2002, I started really kind of thinking about it, putting it together, researching it. I started working with students in 2004. So I really put some time in beforehand to really kind of get a better understanding of the situation out there. But background story, oddly enough, my training is in oceanography. And now I'm doing college access with students in Arizona.
It's amazing.
And for years, I was teaching things called semesters at sea. So going out on a tall ship, for example, and doing a full semester with college students where they're taking a full load of courses, but they're also crew members on the ship. Okay, so they're getting up at 4 a.m. and doing a watch for the ship and doing everything that it takes to keep the ship running. I was also teaching with in expeditions with the National Outdoor Leadership School and Outward Bound. So all of these were experiential programs that were incredibly life transforming for the students. And I was finding after some years of working in these programs that I was only working mostly with wealthy kids. And I started thinking, gosh, where is everybody else? And that got me looking into education statistics and finding that achievement gap between low income and high income students and who goes on to college. And when you look at statistics like that, that's not on ability alone, right? There's these other factors coming in. And so then I started reaching out to teachers and educators, vice principals, counselors at high schools. And I said, what is the deal here? Like, I just started meeting with people. So what's going on here? And they said, Tracy, there's so many kids that we personally know that were doing really well in school, taking hard courses. Everybody thought they were on track to go to college. Nobody's really kind of paying attention to them because they're not causing any problems. They're not dropping out, but they're also, not going on to college. And when I really heard that, that was the thing that really got me super motivated to work with these students that are working hard, willing to put the hard work in.
Right.
And they're just not getting the guidance to make that transition to college. When we look at our families, a vast majority of our parents haven't even gotten a high school education. So, you know that a student getting a high school diploma is already going kind of way past the goalpost, right? The educational goalpost. And so it really, uh, there's a huge need for that kind of multi-year guidance. So when I first started in 2004, it was, and I hate to say just, but it was just a leadership expedition to Alaska for 3 weeks, sea kayaking, okay, in the Alaskan wilderness. And we partnered with the National Outdoor Leadership School, NOLS, and we've been doing that for 20 years. And really to get them outside of their known world, outside of their comfort zone, because
Yeah.
you know, as adults, we can say until we're blue in the face, you can do anything you set your mind to and you work hard to get. But until a student really believes that internally, it's just going over their heads.
Right.
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 And so these experiences really inform them internally that they can take on challenges they never thought they could take on. Right.
Yeah, Tracy, I want to pause there for a second. I was in conversation with Juliana Tapper yesterday. She has a book that just was published around math interventions at grades 6 through 12. And we were talking about the idea of gatekeeping and how a lot of our educational systems are gatekeepers, especially for caregivers and students that don't know all of the ins and outs of the courses you have to take and those,
100%.
for lack of a better word, tracks you really have to be cognizant of, especially even in middle school. And that's was fascinating to just tease that out with her. And it's a lot of what you're speaking to, right?
Yes. And if a student is tracked in, one of the things that I tell educators is, if you can get them going on Algebra 1
Yeah,
in
that's what we were
8th grade,
talking about. Yeah.
right?
And
So
earth
that they can
science.
get through calculus,
Right.
by the time they graduate. And just pushing students into, the challenging courses. I mean, the thing that got me really to shift from just an expedition to doing a multi-year college prep and college access program, which now we work with students from their sophomore year all the way through high school graduation. And it's incredibly comprehensive, including working with parents on financial aid. So that's a gatekeeping part too,
Sure
right?
is. Sure is.
But I got one of our students that I was instructing on these expeditions, and so you really bond with students. And I'd ask students where they were applying to school, and they'd say the local community college and Stanford, or the local community college and the local Arizona University, which we have 3 wonderful state universities here. But that was it. That was all that they were saying. One girl came to me and I asked her, and she said, "I'm going to apply to the local community college and Smith College." And when she said that, I realized she really doesn't know Smith College from anything, but she's heard that come out of my mouth and she trusts me. And so she's going to apply to the school.
Yeah.
So then I said, "Oh my gosh, great, great, great. Let me look at your transcript, high school transcript. I'm going to help you navigate this and apply to Smith." And when I looked at the transcript, straight A's, not a single challenging course on the transcript. And that's really what the straw that broke the camel's back for me. I was like, wow, I've got to jump in the deep end of the pool,
Yeah.
and really work with students and guide them in the courses they should be taking. I mean, our STEP students take the most challenging courses at their high schools. And you have to do that for, what we say is this is not about going to college. It's about getting a college degree.
Wait, I want you to say that one more time because
Those are
that's
two
critical.
very different things, right?
They sure are. They sure are.
Yeah. So going to college, there's, quite a few students drop out of college. So going to college is not the goal. The goal is a 4-year college degree.
Yeah.
Well,
huge.
there's multiple aspects to being successful in college once you get there. And one of those is to have the rigor, have the background academically. Now, granted, often students coming from predominantly low-income public high schools in the United States, they do not have the same preparation than students that are coming from higher income schools, private schools, that sort of thing. But if you can at least get those students to take the most challenging courses at their public high schools, then the ability to transition to college and really work hard to increase that rigor and do that, we found our students are successful. But so this is
Yeah.
what I say to our students. When you transition from high school to college, you're going from taking however many college level courses, let's call them advanced placement courses, to 100% college courses,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
doesn't it make sense for you to take as many college level courses as you can in high school to prepare yourself for that, right?
It does. It does. And I want to just take a moment to speak to two pieces that you've mentioned. I want to go back to the very beginning of this conversation where you said you really didn't start the program until 2004. You took 2 years to dive in deeply and research and be in conversation with people on the ground.
When COVID happened, a lot of schools went to being test optional because literally students could not test. They couldn't get to testing centers were closing, et cetera, et cetera. So all these schools, typically requiring testing, said we're going to go test optional, and they've been that way for now years. And now there is this groundswell for school for really kind of it started, with some of the Ivy League institutions, Dartmouth, et cetera, saying, "Oh, we're going to reinstate testing." And there were a couple New York Times articles about that. And gosh, we could do a whole podcast on that.
Yes.
But I can tell you from my experience for 20 years working with our students do not tend overall. I'm not saying that there aren't students that test amazingly, but overall, the standardized testing scores are not good. And our students have been going to test optional schools from the very beginning, like Bowdoin and Smith College, schools that have been test optional way before the pandemic. And these are high ranked schools, really rigorous schools, and our students were graduating. Then when the pandemic happened and they took test requirements off, I mean, our students have been going to the top ranked schools our entire time, but more students went to kind of those Ivy League institutions that would otherwise have testing requirements. And guess what? They're doing well and they're graduating.
Yes.
And so I really feel so strongly that bringing standardized testing back is a gatekeeper that is going to keep really students that absolutely can thrive at these schools out of these schools.
So that's so fascinating to me because I've shared with you, I have a senior in high school right now, and he did choose to take the SAT, the ACT, and he's submitting those scores. And so I want to linger here for a second because I hear you saying the students do need to take the most challenging courses, those AP courses, and it's also important to know where you're going to be able to thrive in showing and presenting yourself as a student, as a learner. And so I want to set aside the gatekeeping of the standardized tests and talk more about the APs, because a lot of kids take AP courses with the notion that they have to get a 4 or 5 on the exam. So what is the secret sauce you've found to help and support the students at the high school level in thriving in those AP classes if they may not have the background knowledge and schema going into the experience?
What I found with our students, and this goes back to that's kind of a, grit versus talent.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or, is our students work hard and they're going to do the hard work to excel in those AP classes. Are they going to get a 4 and 5 on the AP exam? Some absolutely will. Some won't. They'll get 1s, 2s, 3s, whatever. But the fact that they took the rigor of that AP course and did the hard work to excel in them, I don't think it's about the AP exam.
That's what I agree.
I really don't. And, what we know, and, I've worked with colleges and universities for 20 years, and they say, we want to see the students taking the most rigorous courses. And they know what AP is. They know what that rigor is. They don't know what a dual enrollment course is, right? Because it very much depends on the community college that they're doing the dual enrollment course with, right? And there's no concept of really what that rigor is. And one of the things that I'm finding happening is that there's more and more an emphasis on dual enrollment to the and taking off AP. And one of the reasons is the schools principals will say, well, our students aren't testing well in the AP. So we're going to walk away from AP and go to dual enrollment. And that's a groundswell I'm also seeing.
Can you define what dual enrollment is for listeners?
Dual enrollment is where it's like you're taking a course in high school, but you're also getting like community college credit for it.
So let's talk community college track, because you and I have had this conversation previously. And I hear a lot of students receiving advice of, you don't need to jump right into a 4-year college, start at community, transfer in. What results are you seeing with that with your students?
Well, I think a lot of educators out there they'll advise students differently if they're coming from low income or high income. Maybe students they're excelling in the same way in school, maybe taking those hard courses. And I think there's a myth out here, a myth that is generally people believe this thing, which is, you should go to, if a low income student should go to community college for the first 2 years and get their gen eds out of the way. And it's going to be cheaper for you to go to community college than to go to a 4-year institution right out of high school. And that's just not true. Specifically not true if you're working really hard in high school, taking the most challenging courses and excelling, okay? Because there are scholarships available to you to go directly and pay for you're going directly to a 4-year institution. So one of the things that we work with, again, remember, I'm going to go back to that statement. Our goal is for our students to get a college degree.
To graduate, yes.
Right?
Yes.
And not just to go to college.
Right.
And hands down, I've seen the 20 years that I've done this, that going directly to a 4-year institution is the highest likelihood of getting a degree in 4 years and getting a degree, period, to be honest with you.
Yes.
Because initially, when we were not doing the college access program and college prep program that we're doing now, we're just doing the expedition, a lot of our students went to community college. And it really takes that much more fortitude to go to 2 years, then navigate the transition to a 4-year institution. And when you look at the statistics there, it's not a lot of students are going from a community college to a 4-year institution. And when we just look at the loan debt too now with our students, we've seen that it's actually cheaper to go directly to a 4-year institution because you're getting those scholarships to pay for that.
So what are the results, the actual numbers that you're seeing with the college prep program?
Well, our results, and it's important to understand, again, speaking to that, our emphasis is getting a college degree. When we give the statistics on the success of our program, we're not talking about the number of students who go to college. We're talking about the number of students that persist in college and get a college degree.
Yes.
So our statistic is 96% of our alumni are in college or have a college degree.
And so, with those results, you have the mentorship happening while students are in high school. And then you also have that ongoing mentorship. Does it continue once the students graduate? Like how long into their college experience does that include?
Well, our structured program is fully focused on our high school students. Now, that being said, we provide a support group for an online support group for our alumni. We introduce alumni that are going to colleges and universities where our alumni are currently attending. We're introducing that whole group so that those students that are on those campuses can be kind of mentors and friends, helping them navigate that transition to college. So, and we always say to our alumni, we are absolutely here. And I've worked with quite a few alumni, just helping them in their next step of perhaps applying to graduate school. So, the relationship continues. The structured program, we're really focusing on our high school students. And one of the key things, again, speaking to getting a college degree, one of the key things we're working on is self-advocacy skills for our students. That is critical because we know it's not, again, as a high school student, you think, oh, I'm doing all this work. And then my goal and the end product is I'm going to college, right? And it's like, gosh, what we know as adults is it just starts there, right?
Yes.
And, and navigating all the challenges that they are going to face in college, and specifically for low income students, those challenges are vast, okay, on so many levels. But to be able to navigate that so that you can successfully get through that and get to a college degree, you have to have the skills to do that. You have to have the skills to ask for help when you need help. You have to ask, you get to have the skills when somebody says no to you to just not take no for an answer, right?
Right.
And
Right.
really push through.
Yeah.
And, we say to our students and parents when they first enter our program, our whole goal is to become obsolete in your life.
Yeah, and I also, that idea of self-advocacy, you've mentioned grit before, that you really can't instill that in a student. But I go back to when we were just touring and visiting different schools, and we sat in on a couple of student panels, and what we heard time and time again from the students is take advantage of office hours. Get
A
to know
hundred,
your professors. You show up for office hours. It is okay if you're lost, do your best in class. But if you are not taking advantage of office hours, you are totally missing out. And I think that's something that you wouldn't even consider. And there's the notion with some families and the way some children are raised that it's impolite once you hear no for the first time, that you would push beyond that. But we know that that's just not the case in business.
yes, and you're right. There's there's kind of that cultural background, perhaps, right? But then also there's something that social scientists have found, which is when you're coming from, say, a low income background or a non-traditional, like you're going to a predominantly white wealthy institution, and you are not coming from that background, right? They also see it with women going into science, for example. It's just that this idea that I have to prove that I can do this, and the only way I'm going to really prove that if I totally do it on my own. It's the most destructive thing that the mindset that you can have, okay? But it is something that is a burden for low income students or non-traditional students to think, I can't, if I reach out for help, I'm showing weakness or I'm showing that I can't do it on my own. And actually, it's the opposite mindset
It
that's going to
is.
get you to be successful, right? And we just had, we always do, we bring alumni back for one of the last workshops that our seniors get. And we bring alumni back that have now transitioned and been successful at school. And we have them come back and really talk to our students about what that transition is like. And it really is super challenging. That first year is so challenging, right? It's so easy for our students to think they don't belong, that the school made a mistake, that they made a mistake, that they're maybe just, oh, they're just part of a statistic. I mean, there's just so many things that a student could think about that when they're placed in a situation where not many people look like they do and not many people come from where they come from, right? So this imposter syndrome is
Right.
very common. And so our alumni come back to really talk about that. That is real. But the difference is knowing that other people that have gone before you that have been successful, that came from where you came from, experience that too. And this is how they got through it. And they got through it by going that extra mile, by reaching out and going to professors' office hours to you know uh, just doing, going to study sessions, asking for help, et cetera, et cetera. And one of our alumni, we just literally had this workshop last weekend, and he said something. It was something of about, like asking for help doesn't mean you can't do it. It means that and I'm totally paraphrasing it. He said it much more eloquently than this, but it's like asking for help actually shows how the skill set that you have to be able to be to do what it takes to be successful. And I've completely, he said it in a much more eloquent way, but
Yeah.
when he said it, I told him, I said, say that again, because, you have to advocate for yourself. That's how you're going to be successful, not only in college, but in career and life, et cetera.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would also say that it's really important to know when you don't know. And I have found in relationships, in business, and being in the consulting world, I lose faith in colleagues or in sitting in sessions with people that I feel like are being really inauthentic and not acknowledging. I'd much rather say to someone, if I'm asked a question, I'm not sure. I have
Right.
no idea. Can I reach out to someone else and circle back with you? Then make up an answer. And I think that's another lens of this that's critical for students to know. It's okay to say you don't know and
And it's
to reach
okay to
out.
reach out for help. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And
That's
and that
really
by
big.
by doing that, you're actually showing a maturity, a great maturity and a great kind of wisdom in doing that.
Yeah.
And then when you've gone through that transition, and now you're the person that has got this skill set, then you're there to then help the next generation coming in,
Yeah,
you
I
know?
appreciate the mentorship that you're incorporating into the program because again, I envision this. It's multi-generational, and that's what I appreciate, that you are in the long game for this. And you and I have also talked about that idea of a secret sauce, that it would be really awesome if you could clone yourself and create this type of program all over the world. And yet, that's not really where the direction you want to go in. And so, talk more about that.
Well, I think, a lot of what we do is very much common sense. It's not rocket science, but it's also like relationship based,
Yeah,
right?
on the ground.
It's on the ground. And it is, hey, let's look at what needs to happen now in high school for you to be successful as you transition and then go through college. And also, let's expose you and your family to what is out there. One of the things that I want to point out is the only schools we work with outside of Arizona are the ones that meet full financial need of the students and families. That's
Okay.
how we choose the schools that we work with outside of Arizona. Now, we also work with our Arizona universities, our 3 Arizona universities, but to give them a full exposure of what is out there, right? And being able to have college completely covered and paid for. It just happens that those schools are the highest ranked schools in the country.
Mm.
So we
But
don't
that
we
says
don't
a lot.
we don't choose the schools that are highest ranked. That's not what we do. We choose the schools that will fund our students. And that, taking off that financial burden is a huge piece. But so back to like so you're sitting down and you're thinking, what are the barriers here? Right? And how can we approach those barriers? How can we educate people? How can we expose people? How can we get the students to be taking the courses that they need to take to be prepared, not only prepared, but to have those schools interested in them?
Yes.
Because again, the school is not, one of these schools is not going to accept you if, for example, the transcript that I originally saw, which is straight A's, but no hard courses, because they don't want you to fail at their institution and they know their institution has high rigor, you know? So you're preparing the students so that they are attractive to these institutions also.
And how do, like, just the idea of even connecting with you and STEP, do you go into schools? Like, how are people finding you?
Absolutely. We do a massive outreach every fall. So our applications are due so students apply to our program in their sophomore year, and those applications are due around Thanksgiving. So in the fall, we're reaching out to our predominantly low income, large public schools in Phoenix and Tucson. We're reaching out to counselors and we're saying, hey, we want to come to your school. We want to tell your sophomores about this, specifically sophomores coming from that low income background, coming from a first gen background where their parents don't have a 4-year college degree. And we want to speak to them about STEP and encourage them to apply. So we do. And then now we've been doing it for 20 years. I think there's a lot of word of mouth that happens.
Absolutely.
We don't have partner high schools. So any any Arizona student that can come to our workshops in Phoenix and Tucson can apply to our program. And yeah, so we do a massive outreach.
That makes sense. And I know you have said too that the application process is no joke. And so if someone decides, you're establishing that high bar and expectation for rigor right out of the gate.
Absolutely. You have to write 6 essays. If a student looks at that and goes, "Nah, not interested," then that's probably a pretty good indication that it's not a good fit for our program. We're really looking for students that are really ready to work hard, and honestly, when we look at our applications and those essays are so critical with this, what I'm looking for is internal motivation.
Yes. Yes.
I'm looking for a kid that really is got that motivation to work hard and have this be their goal, because I can give students a lot in our program: confidence, larger worldview, self advocacy skills. Right? We can expose them to a lot, et cetera. But you can't really give a person internal motivation.
No, no, you can't.
So that's what
And
we're looking for.
yeah. And, I want to wrap by just saying you are an incredibly inspiring person and you're passionate about this. And you've said a few times you've been doing this for 20 years and you lived a completely other like 1.0 career and life before this, and this is Tracy 2.0, and I'm sure there's
Absolutely.
many other versions, but I think there's something to be said of your modeling for your students, that when you find something you're really passionate about, you'll go to the ends of the earth to make it happen, and that your everyday modeling that ethic of, put time in to what matters. And
Put time
so,
in when nobody's paying attention.
yeah,
When
it's
there
so
are
true.
when there are no accolades coming your way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Do the hard work. This is one of the other things I tell our students. It's like, I think almost this story of how I started STEP is kind of an indication of what education can do for you. Okay. I think what education does for people, it allows them to make choices and to follow their passion, right? If you're just really having to work a 9 to 5 job just to barely pay the rent and that sort of thing, like you can't really be thinking, oh, I want to go down this route. I was an oceanographer, I was a researcher, I was a teacher, and I said, oh, I want to do this thing. I always had that to fall back on,
Yeah.
right? So I could kind of take this risk and say, no, I really want to see if I can make this happen. And I think education gives you the freedom to do that sort of thing. And, everybody says follow your passion, but your passion shifts throughout life.
Of course it does.
Right.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
this is what I tell our students, like, you have a passion now, but, down the road, you're going to have possibly another passion, and education gives you that ability to shift with that.
Yeah, and it shifts the privilege. It shifts that lens of privilege of where we can say, "Oh, follow your passion," but if you don't have the privilege, you're in my mind flattening that hierarchy and opening up this world that is not open enough to people that are low income, to children of students of color, their families. So I think that that's another huge piece of this.
Another thing I want to say is the ripple effect of this is huge. We are literally talking about generational change.
Yes.
And so, we're working with, for example, we're working with so many families who we are working with multiple siblings, right? Like the older sibling, and then we're working with their cousins are coming, friends that they've talked to, their family members, they're shifting. Not only will that person get a college degree, but they're shifting that for the people, the family, the friends, the community in their life,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
then, once you have a college degree, likely your children are going to know about college as soon as they can understand the word.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So there's this shift that goes way beyond just the individual students that we're working with. In fact, our counselors at these high schools have said, gosh, STEP has such a larger impact because the students that you're training in this program are training their peers.
Yes, it's every level of the fractal and the ripple effects that are there. I couldn't agree more. Tracy, this work is as you just said, you're up very early, you're working when no one is looking. What inspires you? Who inspires you to keep going?
There's an easy answer to that question, and that is these students and these families.
Yeah.
Our students, they are incredibly inspirational. I feel so grateful to be able to work with these spectacular human beings. I mean, when you look at what our students have on their plate, they're not just high school students. They're taking care of their siblings. They might be holding down a job. They're just diamonds in the rough. I mean, just spectacular. And to be able to kind of launch them into higher education and then launch them into, being able to be the voices in the rooms
Yes.
that they might not otherwise be in. So, the boardrooms, CEOs, physicians, attorneys, politicians, to be able to launch these voices for the future that we absolutely need, um, coming from these traditionally, historically, say, low income populations. I think that to me is incredibly inspirational.
Well, finding out and learning about you and the STEP program has been a really transformative experience for me. And it gives me so much hope and where we can go if we all work together to serve the needs of all of the people in our world and not just the privileged. And so I am grateful for you and the work you're doing. And thank you for taking the time to hold space for this conversation.
Can I give a quick shout out for if anybody's
Please.
interested in learning more about STEP?
Of course.
Google STEP College Prep or Google STEP Expedition. We're going to
Yes.
pop right to the top.
You will.
Yes, we will pop right to the top of your Google search when you do that. And we have a really great website that just gives a lot of information about what we're doing. And so if anybody would like to learn more, and then I'll just say a shout out to anybody that is out there thinking they might want to do this in their community. I'm happy to speak with them.
Oh, that's such a big offer. And I will tuck all of the links, all things STEP and college prep, into the show notes so they have access to you. And thank you so much, Tracy.
Thank you.
Take care.
Scholutions Coaching and Teaching Strategies is created, produced, and edited by me, Olivia Wall. Thank you to my older son, Benjamin, who created the music playing in the background. You can follow and listen to Scholutions wherever you get your podcasts, or subscribe to never miss an episode and watch on YouTube. Thank you to my guest, Tracy Baines, for sharing how to stop the gatekeeping cycle of college admissions and support all students that want to acquire college degrees. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email at scholutionspodcast@gmail.com. Let me know what resonated most with you from my conversation with Tracy. And what challenges have you faced with the college application process? I know we're in the thick of it right now. Tune in every Monday for the best research-backed coaching and teaching strategies you can apply right away to better the lives of the children in your care. Stay tuned for my bonus episodes every Friday, where I'll share how I applied what I learned from the guests in schools that week. See you then.